So then, I hope you're enjoying doing your revision for the First World War. This short film is really meant to help you with the causes, and I think there are a few things that you want to really sort out during the causes. Just get an idea of the chronology of the period, kind of probably need to go back as far as 1894 when France and Russia allied, and wind up to, well, right forward to August 1914, when actually the great powers started declaring war on each other. So the question is why, and generally you'll get asked, do you think it was because of, well, a number of factors. Do you think it was Germany's fault? Do you think it was the alliance system's fault, perhaps the arms race? What about Russia, Serbia and Balkan issues? That's another key factor to look at. And probably finally, what about Britain and France? Can either of those two powers be blamed for causing the First World War? So what we're going to do is just look at one of those four factors. I think for the essay that you do, you can write a straw man argument. So you could probably start off with saying, well, actually, on the surface, it seemed like maybe it was Russia or Serbia or the Balkans' fault. Probably, really, I think it was Germany's fault, or maybe you take more of a view that it was the alliance system. Whatever it is, start off in your essay with a strong paragraph. Say what you think. On the surface, it might look like maybe one or two or three of these other factors. And then right at the end of it, or the first bit of the next paragraph, you can put a big but in. Actually, this is what I think. So if the question, whatever the question asks you to do, the thing it asks you to concentrate on, you should probably spend about 40% of your argument either agreeing with that or disagreeing with it, supporting other factors. So really, this is going to say what are the key points you have to revise in those other factors. Let's first take a look at why you could argue the First World War was Germany's fault. Well, number one, first of all, the Schlieffen Plan. So know that it was formed in 1905. Schlieffen was the German Chief of General Staff then, and the idea was that this great plan to take out Russia and France at the same time would involve the fact that Russia took longer to mobilise, so the German army could go in trains right against France, take them by surprise by going through neutral Belgium, and when the French army was defeated, sort of swing right round behind Paris. Then all the German soldiers could get on trains, the Russian army, which had only just really began to get into the field, and knock the Russian army out, and that way Germany could beat both Russia and France. And of course Germany knew that she'd have to do that because of that 1894 alliance. Well, the Schlieffen Plan was obviously very aggressive, not least because it meant invading neutral Belgium. That could take out Britain, which is exactly what happened. Britain came into the war because Germany invaded Belgium. So you might blame Germany for that. So that's one reason. The second reason is that a lot of people see that Germany, in particular, their ruler, Kaiser Wilhelm, were very aggressive in their colonial policy, in their desire. It was called Weltmacht, which is a kind of German word for sort of getting some power in the world domination. And they've looked at stuff that the Kaiser did, foreign policy. In particular, they've looked at the policy in Morocco, where the Kaiser kind of felt Germany wasn't being listened to enough in relation to both France and Britain. So twice in Morocco, 1905 and 1911, the Kaiser sort of instituted aggressive actions. You remember in 1911, he sent a gunboat to protect Germany's interests, and really this had the effect of drawing France and Britain even more close, and the other powers thought, well, Germany is actually aggressive and perhaps might want war. Then the third reason why Germany might want war is that you've got German generals like Moltke, who then became the German Chief of Staff. He was Chief of Staff in 1914. Of course, he'd be petrified at fighting a war on two fronts, and as far as he was concerned, he saw Russia mobilising more quickly because of their Great Reform Programme, which was due to be completed in 1916. That meant the Russians could get soldiers by train much quicker into Germany than the Schlieffen Plan had thought. So the argument goes, the German generals kind of pushed the Kaiser into wanting a war quicker, a preventative war against Russia. And there's an example of this, the historians say in Potsdam near Berlin in 1912, that there was this conference, the Potsdam War Conference. That's just an example of that. And, you know, if you want more ammunition, what about the increase in the size of the German army just before the war in 1913? But, you know, the killer argument, the fourth one with Germany, is really saying, look, you know, Moltke, the German general, and his mates in the Prussian High Command really pushed Austro-Hungary into making an over-aggressive response to Serbia after Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, because really they kind of thought this is our chance to get at Russia, to make it look like Russia's responsible for the war. So they kind of wrote this blank check thing out for Austro-Hungary, which basically said to Austro-Hungary, look, you go and say whatever you want to Serbia, because we really want this as an excuse for war. A lot of historians are unsure about that, but it's certainly one of the arguments you want if you're blaming Germany. So that's Germany's fault. What about saying it was the alliance system or the arms race in general? Well, certainly one can blame the French and the Russians, perhaps the alliance of 1894, because that did promote genuine German fear. What's worse, it was made to seem more immediate by France really aggressively supporting both Russia and Serbian rearmament in the years up to 1914. So, of course, Germany had every right to feel that she was encircled by those two countries. And then, of course, the idea of the terms of the Franco-Russian alliance meant, because of the Schlieffen Plan, that when Germany actually declared war on Russia on the 1st of August, she actually then had to straight away attack France on the 3rd of August, because she knew that a war against Russia meant she had to fight France first. So the alliance system dragged Germany into making those decisions, which if it wasn't there, then Germany wouldn't have had to have done that. And, you know, I think the whole system of the Franco-British alliance, well, it wasn't an alliance, it was called an entente, and that's really the problem. Lord Grey supported France in two Morocco crises in 1905 and in 1911. And that really brought out antagonistic feelings between Britain and Germany. You can argue that. You can point to the naval race with this big ship, the new Dreadnought, being launched by Britain, causing an arms race of the Navy's trying to build out one and then the other and then the other, which of course caused much tension. So that's the alliance system causing tension. But I think it's really worth looking at, you know, blaming Russia and Serbia and the whole Balkan conflict too. Looking at that in your revision. First of all, Serbia is a very aggressive power in the Balkans, a new and aggressive power, and wants territorial expansion pretty much at Austro-Hungary's expense. So when the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1908 annexes this part of the empire she's been occupying since, well, the end of the 1870s, Bosnia-Herzegovina, the Serbians think this is disastrous, and of course by then Russia and Serbia are together. And really, Germany says to Russia, you know, lay off doing anything against Austro-Hungary in 1908. Russia's already feeling a bit, you know, left out and hard done by. She's lost the 1904-5 war against Japan, and so looking to make an impact. And here goes Austro-Hungary taking, well, Serbia's interest in Bosnia-Herzegovina away. So really that determined Russia to be more aggressive, particularly towards Austro-Hungary, and also more supportive of Serbia. Now Serbia was very aggressive anyway in that expansion program. And we can see that in the second Balkan Wars. There are two in 1912 and 1913, the second one in particular, where Serbia gets really, really successful because she's managed to defeat the other Balkan powers and therefore gets a much bigger territory, which therefore gives Serbia a much bigger army. Of course, Austro-Hungary's now got more to worry about, has to divert army corps to fight Serbia in any potential conflict, which means taking troops off the Russian front, which means it's more dangerous for Germany because there's less Austrian troops to fight Russia if there is a war. And then, of course, one can actually say, what about the assassination of Franz Ferdinand? Not an official Serbian action, but certainly planned by Serbian terrorists, financed and supported by rogue ministers, possibly rogue ministers in the Serbian government. And you could see Hungary's response to that invasion, the demand, as really legitimate. I mean, they were terrorists, they'd murdered the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and therefore Austro-Hungary had every right to make a real strong ultimatum and deal with Serbia. And actually, the Austrian invasion of Serbia was not necessarily a cause for Russia to support Serbia. There was no Russian-Serbian alliance. And actually, when Russia did invade, it meant she not only mobilised her army against Austro-Hungary, but she also, on the 30th of August 1914, mobilised her army against Germany at the same time, which of course meant then Germany said, right, unless you stop your mobilisation, Russia, we will declare a war on you. So you've really got the Tsar Tsar Nicholas being pushed into war by aggressive generals and aggressive ministers like Sazonov. So that's the kind of Russia-Serbia argument. And then I think finally, what about Britain and France? Do they deserve any of the blame for war? So I think one can say, well, for Britain, certainly Britain and their Foreign Minister, Lord Grey, could have been much more clear about who they would or wouldn't support. Would they go to war if France was attacked or not? And clearly these alliances and ententes that Britain made, well, they weren't alliances, they were just sort of friendship agreements. Britain made one with France in 1904 and another with Russia in 1907. But Grey never said, absolutely, we will not go to war in a European conflict, or he didn't say, absolutely, we will go to war. And Grey being unclear meant that neither France nor Russia, for that matter Germany, knew in 1914 would Britain go to war or not. Now perhaps if Grey had been more clear, that might have meant Germany would have taken a different course, Austro-Hungary, Russia, or France, certainly. So that could be one argument to attack Britain on. France, well, the French president Poincaré in 1914, he was known as a hardliner. He disliked Germany, and he really adopted an aggressive anti-German policy. In fact, Poincaré, the French president, was in St. Petersburg really quite close up to July 1914, at the end of July, and the argument is he was kind of pushing Russia, saying we will support you, and the French sort of wanted Russia to stay with them, and if that meant going to war, I think that was probably, people say it was an argument France was prepared to put up with the war. Naturally, you know, if they had given massive loans to both Russia and Serbia for arms reforms, then, you know, why not? And I think then finally with Britain, you know, in August 1914, historians like Niall Ferguson have argued that Britain did not actually have to go into the First World War. Even though Germany and France were at war, perhaps even though Germany invaded France via neutral Belgium, Britain did not actually have to stay into war. Grey used an excuse because of neutral Belgium being invaded by Germany in the end to persuade his cabinet in the House of Commons. But the argument goes that Britain could have stayed out and avoided all those deaths, and it could have just really been a continental war. So take all those four different factors on board, know some names, know some dates, balance your essay up, and decide one of the factors, you know, commit, and tell me that in the first paragraph, and then a bit of data in the next one, and I'm sure you'll be great. Good luck.